Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. Look, we've literally all been there. You put a pot on the stove, cross your fingers, and just hope for the best, only to end up with this universally frustrating mess of gummy, clumpy, or just completely blown out rice. It is so annoying, especially when you find yourself chiseling a cemented layer of burnt grains off the bottom of your absolute favorite pot. We've all ruined a dinner that way. But today, we're going to solve this forever. We're throwing out the guesswork and taking a strict biochemical approach to getting perfectly fluffy rice every single time.
So here's our game plan today. We'll decode the starch matrix, talk about choosing your grain, tackle the bran barrier, and then break down two master formulas, Protocol Alpha for white rice and Protocol Beta for brown rice.
All right, kicking things off with part one, the starch matrix, or the biochemistry of texture.
When a batch of rice goes wrong, it's so easy to blame the water ratio, right? Or maybe even your stove. But seriously, what invisible forces are actually deciding if your rice turns out fluffy or sticky? What's going on at the microscopic level? Well, it all comes down to the starch.
Think of every grain of rice as a tiny battleground between two competing starches. First up, we've got amylose. Amylose is this long, straight molecule that honestly just really likes its personal space. It's super independent, doesn't tangle easily. If your rice is packed with amylose, you're getting those beautifully light, perfectly separate grains you'd want with a curry or a stir-fry. Now on the flip side, meet amylopectin. This guy is the clingy villain of fluffy rice. It's highly branched, kind of like a microscopic tangled tree, and it loves to grab onto its neighbors. High amylopectin practically guarantees sticky, clumping rice. So if you want a non-sticky result, you absolutely have to know which of these two starches is dominating your grain before you even turn on the tap.
Moving right along to part two, choosing your grain and selecting the right profile. Picking your rice isn't about grabbing the fanciest box on the shelf. It's entirely about the starch profile. Take long-grain varieties like basmati or jasmine. These guys are absolutely loaded with that straight, independent amylose we just talked about. If your goal is fluffy, separate grains, this is literally the only category you should be looking at. Then you've got medium grain like cow roast. These have a much more balanced profile, giving you a slightly sticky, moist texture that's perfect for everyday table rice. And finally, short grain like sushi rice or arborio. These are packed with that clingy amylopectin. You actually want them sticky, so you can easily pick them up with chopsticks or mold them. So here's a massive takeaway for you. It is biologically impossible to make high amylopectin short grain rice fluffy. Just don't even try. It's chemically engineered to be sticky and cohesive.
Okay, section 3. The bran barrier. White versus brown processing.
So we've got the inside of the grain figured out, but what about the outside? Mechanical processing changes everything here. Take brown rice. This is the whole grain, complete with its nutrient-dense germ and fibrous bran layer. I want you to think of that bran layer as a natural raincoat. It's totally hydrophobic, meaning it actively repels water. So it takes a lot more water and energy to break through it during cooking. White rice, on the other hand, the factory literally polished off the bran and the germ. It's completely exposed. Without that raincoat, the starchy inside just drinks up water super fast and cooks in a fraction of the time.
All right, section 4. Let's put this science to work with our first master formula, Protocol Alpha, for perfect fluffy white rice.
First up is the mechanical wash. You've got to run that raw rice under cold water and aggressively massage the grains with your hands until the water runs crystal clear. And guys, this isn't just some polite kitchen suggestion, it is a strict chemical requirement. Remember that clingy amylopectin? Well, the mechanical milling process that strips away the bran leaves highly branched amylopectin dust all over the surface of white rice. If you don't physically wash that off, it essentially acts like glue in your pot. Leaving it on guarantees gummy, gluey rice, even if your water ratio is absolutely flawless.
Once that glue is gone, here's the exact 4-step formula for Protocol Alpha. Step 1, the wash. We just nailed that. Step 2 is hydration. You need exactly 1 cup of washed rice to 1.5 cups of water plus a pinch of salt. Precision is everything here. Step 3 is the thermal phase. Bring it to a rapid boil. And the absolute second it boils, drop the heat to the lowest possible setting, slap on a tight-fitting lid, and let it simmer for exactly 15 minutes for full gelatinization. And step 4, the rest phase. 10 minutes, entirely off the heat.
Now, during that 15-minute simmer, you're going to be so tempted to lift the lid. We literally all do it. You just want to see if the water is absorbed. But why is lifting that lid considered absolute culinary sabotage?
Well, there's a brilliant quote from the source material that perfectly explains the incredibly high stakes here.
Opening the pot releases the exact amount of steam mathematically calculated to cook the top layer of grains. Think about that. It's a closed equation. That 1 to 1.5 water ratio we set up, it completely relies on trapping that specific volume of steam to cook the rice from the bottom of the pot all the way to the top. Lift the lid, the math breaks, the steam escapes, and boom, your top layer stays sad and crunchy. So after those 15 minutes are up, we hit the rest phase. The pot comes off the heat, but you keep that lid firmly shut for another 10 minutes. This is crucial physics right here. At this point, the starches are incredibly delicate and volatile. Resting gives them time to firm up and lets any leftover surface moisture redistribute perfectly throughout the pot. After resting, you fluff it gently with a fork. Actually, wait, let me emphasize this. Never, ever use a spoon. A spoon will brutally crush the exact grains you just spent all this time perfectly cooking, turning your masterpiece back into mush. Stick to the fork.
Moving on to our final formula, Section 5, Protocol Beta for perfect fluffy brown rice.
Brown rice is notoriously tricky, so we have to adjust our variables to beat that natural bran barrier. Step 1 is still a wash, but here it's really just for hygiene since the sticky starch is safely locked under the intact bran. Step 2 is where things change drastically. Because of that hydrophobic raincoat, we need way more solvent. We're talking 1 cup of rice to 2 full cups of water or broth. Step 3, the thermal phase. Rapid boil, tight lid, then lowest heat for 40 to 45 minutes. And step 4 is a slightly longer rest phase of 10 to 15 minutes off the heat.
Notice that number in step 3, 45 minutes. Seriously, it takes that long because that bran layer acts as a physical barrier. The water needs prolonged thermal energy to basically force its way inside and penetrate the endosperm. If you don't give it a full 45 minutes, you're getting crunchy, ungelatinized brown rice. You simply cannot rush physics.
And just like with Protocol Alpha, patience at the very end is absolutely crucial. With brown rice, resting is totally mandatory. If you try to rush it and eat it straight off the stove, the centers are going to be unpleasantly chewy and the outsides will be completely wet. Waiting that extra 10 to 15 minutes is literally the only way to let the moisture completely balance out so you get a fluffy texture without blowing out the grains.
So, armed with all this science, you're not just hoping for a good side dish anymore. You know exactly how amylose and amylopectin work. You understand the mechanical realities of the bran layer, and you've got the strict mathematical formulas for hydration and steam down cold. So, how are you going to manipulate the starch matrix the next time you fire up your stove? Treat your pantry like a culinary lab, and I promise you, you will never eat gummy rice again. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.